Psalm 121 verse 9. The good things we seek. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I have sought good things for thee. Psalm 121 verse 9, Douay Rheims. It is our nature as embodied beings that when we love someone or something, we ultimately have to physically and externally manifest that love. To be sure, the love itself arises within as an interior act of the will, but our nature as a composite of soul and body entails that what is determined within by the soul eventually finds its outward expression in bodily acts. There is not always an immediate correlation in time. A man loves his wife before they are married, but in the act of marriage that love is now able to be expressed in its totality. We can certainly go through the motions in giving bodily acts of homage or adoration without it matching our interior disposition. The psalmist notes how the children of Israel in the desert gave honor in their words to God when he gave them what they desired, but within they were unmoved to love. Quote, "And they loved him with their mouth, and with their tongue they lied unto him, but their heart was not right with him, nor were they counted faithful in his covenant." Psalm 77 verses 36 through 37, Douay Rheims. Because of the intended ordering of our nature, wherein the soul is designed to lead and rule the body, the completed act of love begins within the soul and is then manifested externally. This is why the highest form of worship is sacrifice, for in the offering of something that one possesses, one demonstrates that the one to whom the sacrifice is offered is loved more than the thing offered. And while it is possible to offer sacrifices in vain because one's heart is far from God, or because other motivations compel such an act, this is the tribute that vice pays to virtue, for it is not possible to truly love without sacrifice. Within Christian worship, there are many forms of worship, such as prayers, songs, acts of honor and homage, etc., all of which can be acts of adoration, depending on the intent of one's interior will. But these forms are in themselves equivocal in terms of giving worthship to anything, for they can all be directed without an intent of adoration. That is, singing the praises of something or someone is not in and of itself an act of adoration in the theological sense. It can be if the object is deserving of that and the will intends it, but need not be. Songs of praise are frequently addressed to lovers, nations, angels, and saints, but do not have as their object the notion of adoration which is owed to God. The same is of course true for the other categories indicated. Sacrifice, on the other hand, is explicitly an act of adoration in and of itself. The offering of a sacrifice does not carry the same equivocal sense of worship that other things such as praise or homage do, for in the act of offering sacrifice, the object offered is transformed or destroyed, such that the one offering it no longer possesses it, and does so to acknowledge the supremacy of the one to whom it is offered. Quote, "By sacrifice we understand the offering of a visible object, effected through any change, transformation, or destruction thereof, in order effectually to acknowledge the absolute majesty and sovereignty of God, as well as man's total dependence and submission." Father Nicholas Gear, The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, Chapter 2. And when this is combined with the correct interior intention, the highest act of adoration is offered to God. Quote, "If the exterior rite of sacrifice is in reality to have the above meaning and be a worship acceptable to God, then it must also be an expression of the interior and spiritual sacrifice, and be animated and vivified by the essential sentiments of sacrifice. The visible sacrifice, says St. Augustine, is a holy sign of the invisible offering. Hence the offering up of sacrifice essentially aims to glorify God as the absolute Lord and supreme legislator of all creatures, and this is to adore God. This meaning is inseparably connected with sacrifice. It holds the first place, and is ever an act of worship due to God alone, an act of adoration. Father Nicholas Gear, The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, Chapter 2, 3. It was to offer this sacrifice of adoration that the pilgrims ascended to Jerusalem, which this psalm of ascent both memorializes and prophetically casts forward to the perfect sacrifice offered by our Lord Jesus Christ. At the beginning of this psalm, it was noted that this is the third psalm of ascent, the third step on this rising in charity to the contemplation of God in His goodness and perfection and love. In our Lord's own life, he demonstrated that this ascent is preceded by a descent of emptying out oneself to God's will in humility. And the psalmist brings this theme to bear in the conclusion as he says that, because of, or for the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I have sought good things for thee. There is a direct consonance between the psalmist's prophetic words and St. Paul's admonition prior to his description of our Lord's emptying of himself in the Incarnation. For St. Paul says, quote, "Let nothing be done through contention, neither by vainglory, but in humility let each esteem others better than themselves, each one not considering the things that are his own, but those that are other men's." Philippians chapter 2, verses 3-4, Douay Rheims. To imitate the humility of our Lord is to not consider the things that are one's own, but rather those of others, to be concerned for their interests out of charity and humility, rather than seeking after one's own advantage or desires. Our Lord himself, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. That is, even though he was God, he did not press that to the service of his own desires or wants, but in humility placed himself in service to the will of the Father, came as the Son of Man not to be served, but to serve. Here the psalmist anticipates this in that it is not for his own sake that he seeks good things for the heavenly city, but for the sake of the house of the Lord our God, the bride of Christ, the Holy Catholic Church. Quote, "Because of the house of the Lord my God, I have sought good things for thee. Not on my own account have sought good things, for then I should seek not for thee, but for myself. And so should I not have them, because I should seek not them for thee, but because of the house of the Lord my God, because of the church, because of the saints, because of the pilgrims, because of the poor, that they may go up, because we say to them, we will go into the house of the Lord, because of the house of the Lord my God itself, I have sought good things for thee." St. Augustine, Expositions on the Psalms, 121:14. In the Vulgate, the term nostri is employed, corresponding to haemon in the Septuagint, both meaning our as translated in the Douay Rheims. Some versions of the Old Latin have mei, my, making this because of the house of the Lord my God. Both renderings point to the same reality in the union between Christ and his mystical body, the Holy Catholic Church. But the use of Domini Dei mei perhaps tends to anticipate Christ's offering of his life for his bride, the Church, so as to bring the elect into union with him, where Domini Dei nostri perhaps emphasizes that consummation as already completed, where the redeemed are now in that familial relationship with the Father through the Son, such that, quote, "Both he that sanctifieth and they who are sanctified are all of one. For which cause he is not ashamed to call them brethren, saying, I will declare thy name to my brethren, in the midst of the church will I praise thee." Hebrews chapter 2, verses 11-12, Douay Rheims. The action of having sought good things for thee has its eventual prophetic fulfillment in his sacrifice of himself on the cross as a pleasing oblation to the Father. For the good things are nothing less than for the church to be united to him and partake of the divine nature, such that, as St. Paul says, he that sanctifieth and they who are sanctified are all of one. This seeking was not simple inquiry nor a modest looking for something, but was rather in earnest to the utmost, leading the divine Son to assume to himself a human nature, to be humbled in the form of man and of a slave, and to be obedient to death on the cross. His seeking after our good and our salvation led him to offer the utmost, his very life, and thus on this third step of the ascent of charity, he sought those good things for his church and obtained them. In imitation of him, we offer our bodies as living sacrifices, in union with his one perfect sacrifice to the Father at the holy sacrifice of the Mass, in which we can offer to God that pleasing adoration that he is due. By being brought into union with Christ through the sacrament of baptism, we become a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices, acceptable to God by Jesus Christ, 1 Peter 2:5. It is for the sake of this spiritual house, the house of the Lord our God, that the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and that he offered himself as a sacrifice to God for our salvation, that we might in turn be united with him in that offering, and receive those good things and give pleasing adoration to God unto the farthest horizons of eternity. Quote, so long as the church continues here below combating and suffering in labor and tribulation, will Christ abide as a perpetual sacrifice with her, for he himself will ever be the bright model and inexhaustible source of that life of sacrifice which the church militant, as a true and worthy spouse of the crucified, leads upon earth and will lead unto the heavenly nuptial day, whose happy dawn will usher in endless joy, crown us with victory, and end all suffering. Amid the combat of mortal life, we will, full of consolation and confidence, have recourse to the holy altar to implore their strength, courage, and victory from the divine victim. Father Nicholas Gear, The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, Chapter 11, 3. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I have sought good things for thee. Psalm 121, verse 9, Douay Reims.